Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Erik Solheim. As chair of the DAC, we're very pleased to have you here with us. What I'm particularly interested in is building on the report that you recently produced on ending poverty, so the DAC Development Cooperation report for 2013. I felt it was good to have something so poverty focused, but at the same time I felt that the debate on development is actually becoming much broader. And we're moving towards a sort of international cooperation rather than development cooperation. How does your report fit in with that?
I think we need to do both. We need a very strong focus on this big aim of eradicating poverty by 2030. We need a discussion of how do we mobilize the resources and what are the policies which can achieve that aim. For instance, cash disbursement schemes, as Brazil has done, a focus on the small farmer, as Vietnam has done. You need that focus. But it must fit into a much wider framework, where we also now need a universal principles. Principle will also set targets for, say, my country, Norway, or for the United States, or for Japan, on gender equality, less inequality in society, on environment for sure, and many other issues.
I mean, I saw you had a specific focus on the link between environment and poverty in the report, but you didn't sort of go into other things like trade and poverty, or economic growth. There was a bit, but job creation didn't seem to be a major theme. Maybe I missed it.
I think we should always look for policies which can achieve more than one aim at the same time. Many environmental policies can both provide jobs, protect the environment, and improve the quality of life at the same time. And for instance, the fantastic success story of Brazil in reducing the deforestation in the Amazon, providing jobs to people there, providing economic growth at the same time.
And do you think the members of the DAC, do you think they're geared up for this sort of change? Do you think the ministries have thought it through? Or some probably have, some haven't? I mean, how far do you think they are down that road?
I think still the biggest challenge in today's world is political will.
Political will?
Political will.
So that's at the political level rather than the administrations themselves?
Well, political will can be mobilized top down. That means, from President Xi Jinping or Obama downwards, from civil society activists or normal people, ordinary people upwards. But unless there is real political will, it's hard to achieve anything. And in today's world, there's a lack of leadership. Politicians tend to be domestically focused because they are struggling with re-elections nearly everywhere. And we need real global leadership on the main issues of today: eradication of poverty, save the planet from enormous dangerous climate change, and to stop violence in the worst cases, like, say, the Central African Republic, where we see horrendous violence these days.
But that's the political leadership. But then at the sort of level of the administrations, are you sort of in your peer review system, for instance, pushing administrations to look more at how they work? I know you've done a lot of work on policy coherence, but do you also look at how the administrations need to change to work with other ministries, etc.? Is that part of your focus?
Absolutely. But I still believe that real coherence in policy can only be achieved with political will from prime ministers, presidents. Unless that political will is there, there is no way you can do it administratively. So political will is the number one.
The number one. Okay, well, I would agree with you on that. I think you've got a very strong point. But I think there is also a path dependency at times in ministries, and they need quite a bit of pushing. But let's move on to the EU. In the DAC, the EU group, not all the EU member states are in there, but the big ones are, and some of the more established donors are in there. As a Norwegian, you sit outside the EU, but you are very close observers and very close participants in many things. Do you think the EU has a particular value added, a particular role it can play in the debate coming up, say, for the post-2015 and so on? What do you see that role as?
Number one, the European Union and the European Union member states are providing the bulk of the aid in today's world. 60% of all development assistance is coming from originating in Europe.
Yeah, all right.
I don't think the European Union really get the credit for that. They have not been very good in telling people. If you go to capitals, people tend to speak about the United States and about China, fair enough, because they are world powers, but they do not really know how big the European Union assistance is. That must change, and then I think Europe has a particular role to play in a number of areas, particularly on values. European values are in high regard globally, but it's a long struggle to still keep up support for democracy.
I mean, democracy is a value that you would particularly focus in on, or, I mean, how do you see the EU actually helping on values? You talked, for instance, before about the Bolsa Familia in Brazil. Mm-hmm. Is that an area where European values are important? I mean, getting away from the sort of political, human rights, democracy things into other areas?
I think Europe should speak proudly about its values. But it should not do it pushing anyone hard in its head. I mean, what we need in today's world is less conflict, more cooperation, and more listening. God gave us 2 ears and one mouth. We should listen to the Chinese view, to the Indian view, to the Brazilian view, and then we should enter into a dialogue.
But social protection systems, the way social democracies and so on have been built up in Europe, that is an area where Europe has something to offer?
Very much so. I mean, China is now in the emerging of a welfare state in China, because the Chinese leaders know that you need to provide social security, health to elderly people and to the huge number of still poor people in China. Yeah. If you go to India, they're also starting discussing this. So for sure, Europe has come longer than any other part of the world in providing social security, and we should discuss with others how that can be achieved in other parts of the world. Yeah.
You're very kind to point to the fact that the EU provides 60% of global ODA, but quite often the EU member states are their own worst enemies. I mean, they do their own thing, each in a different angle, and you can hardly say that all that aid is working in the same direction all the time.
And I think that's a particular problem in fragile states, where not only all the EU states, but also North America, Japan, everyone else, all tend to run in their own directions. What we should do is to align behind the priorities of governments so that we can establish functioning states. Without that you will see replicated other places, what you now see in the Central African Republic. There is no state, and it tends to go into an orgy of violence, which is so distasteful, so horrendous.
So really that would probably be the priority area where the EU should really concentrate its efforts in trying to bring its programming together, its thinking together in these fragile states.
EU has provided leadership, say, on Somalia in the Big Brussels conference in September, but we are still beautiful on the principles in the declarations, but there is a long way to go to really align behind the government priorities. Government must set the priorities, but we as donors should accept that leadership.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was a very interesting, quick conversation.
Thank you.